it's time for myself and Mrs. W to actually start our harvest of one of the most important crops in the New Dig Norfolk garden. Onions. In fact, all of the allium family, they are actually one of the most important crops that we grow here in our New Dig Norfolk garden. Why? If you think about it, just about every recipe that you cook or make, the basis will start with an onion. Now, we multi-sow our onions, and you can see here it works really well. They're looking really good, the onions are. And where I'm standing now, that's because I've harvested some of the onions already. Why did I do that? Well, Mrs. W needed some onions to be doing some of her preserves. So I wanted to ensure that she had some onions. And that's something you can do with your onions. You don't have to wait until they've fallen over like you see here. These have reached the end of their life now, so they're ready for harvest. But you can also pick them while they're still green. And because we grow a lot of onions, there's another bed down in plot 1. That's why we can afford to harvest some of these earlier. When it comes to onions, once you start seeing the tops going over, and you can see here how these are, once you sort of get to 2/3 of them naturally falling over, just push the rest over. The idea for doing that is that it softens the necks so that they don't continue to grow and get really thick. Because with a thick neck, they don't store quite as well. When you harvest your onions, try not to yank at them, just gently ease them out of the soil. If you've got particularly hard clay soil, it's a good idea to use maybe a trowel just to get underneath and lever them out slowly so that you don't take the basal plate off. Of course, with us being a new dig here, these pull out of the ground really easy. You can see there's a bunch of onions there. They're a nice size. If you've been with us all the way through this growing season, watching our YouTube channel, you'll know that the variety is Globo. Here are some more onions. In this one, I didn't thin those down particularly good, Mrs. W. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 onions in here.
Wow.
You can see how the multi-sown method works. As they grow, they just push each other out of the way to give them the space that they need. So ordinarily I would thin them down to 3 or 4, like you can see here. But what I just wanted to show you was, these are the onions that I'm growing for our flower and vegetable show that's coming up a bit later on in the year, in August. And you can see that's a really fine big bulb of an onion. But I've had to leave quite a bit of space for that to happen. Whereas with these 6, if I lay them next to it, look how much more onion you get in that space. Of course, they're not as big as that, but that doesn't matter. By the time you add all of the onions together, there is more onion in those 6 than there is in that one single bulb. I have to say, Mrs. W, I do hope we do well again with these onions this year.
So do I. That would be lovely, wouldn't it?
Yeah. In fact, the lady came round today, didn't she, to actually take the trophy back that I won last year.
Yes.
The cupboard is bare, Mrs. W.
The trophy cupboard is empty. Hopefully not for long.
I actually really like this variety Globu, 2 multi-sow, because actually all of the onions, when they're grown in 3s and 4s, they're a good size onion. And I think this year, Mrs. W, more than ever, most of the onions that I'm harvesting, I think for each recipe, when it calls for 1 onion, you may only need to actually use just half. Because these really are good size onion.
They're lovely, aren't they?
Another thing is that these have absolutely no sign of the allium leaf miner. Now, if you've been following our channel all through this growing season, you'll know that I talk about the allium leaf miner quite a lot. It first arrived here in our no-dig Norfolk garden about 2 years ago. First year it arrived, I had absolutely no idea what was going wrong with the onions, and we just thought to ourselves, oh dear, whatever is happening, I've never seen anything like this before. But then I did a bit of research, and I came up with a method that will keep your onions free of the allium leaf miner. And if you want to know more about the allium leaf miner and how I've managed to protect these and get a good clean harvest, I'll leave a link right at the end of the video. The last thing that you see when you get to the end of this video, and just click on that, it'll give you lots of information and ways of how you can actually combat this. Now, these onions that I'm harvesting here, they were sown in mid-January. And I know that from a mid-January sowing, these will harvest in July. And of course it is July. We're just past mid-July.
And these were sown from seed, weren't they? They weren't sets.
They were, Mrs. W. They were sown from seed, and the reason I sow them from seed is that you don't tend to see as much bolting of the onions. Bolting is when a vegetable wants to rise to flower and make its seed. For some time we used to grow our onions from sets, but every year a proportion of them were unstorable because they had bolted. Bolted onions don't store. And a tip for you here, if you have bolted onions, you have 2 choices. You either use it straight away, that'll be fine, because you put it into the store, where it's sent the stalk up inside the onion, that will become extremely hard and woody, and the whole onion will. It'll be taking up the nutrients from the onion that are in there. The other tip that I know Mrs. W used to do was, back in the day when we would have a proportion of onions that would bolt, she would save the day by actually cutting them up and putting them into the freezer. In that way you can store them for much longer, obviously, and you can just take them out and use them as and when you want them. Yes, it's not as great as having a fresh onion, but it is a way that you can continue keeping onions so that they're ready for you to use. Look at those, Mrs.
That's
W.
some beauties, aren't they?
Ooh.
Lovely.
They're not called Globu for nothing.
No, they're not.
So that is actually enough onions in that tray there now. I wouldn't want to put any more, because what we do need to do, in order that we can continue to eat these onions through autumn and winter and into the early part of spring, depending on how long they last us, they need to cure. And the curing process is really, you want things to start to dry out. You can see the skins are already starting to dry out on the outer bit of the onion. But what we now need to do now is to ensure that all the moisture has disappeared from this neck. If there is any moisture left in there when you go to put them into storage, that can cause mould, rot, and that's when your onions go off. So do ensure that you do cure them. One of the reasons I'm actually harvesting these onions right now, right today, is because later on today and tomorrow on Sunday, we are going to get some almighty rainfall. Heavy, thundery showers. And I don't want these to get any wetter than they need to be. If we weren't expecting those rain showers, you could simply leave the onions on top of the soil if you wanted. And if you don't need to plant something else, that's a way of doing it. But what we tend to do is to put them in these crates and they either go under or on shelves that are on top of our compost heap, or they go down to the garage. And because Mrs. W has made some alterations to the garage, there's plenty of space for these to sit along. They cure, and the reason why you don't want to put too many in is because when you cure them, you want the air to circulate around them. So if you keep piling them up on top of each other, not enough airflow is getting there, and that's when they take a long time. You'll often see that people have put special benches up with slots in there, and they put their onions through that and let them cure like that. The other side of these onions here is where our zabroon shallots are. I'm really pleased to say that they're done well. And this year I've been carrying out some trials. I wanted to see, just do these work well multi-sown, because normally when you have a set and you don't sow from seed, they will split into 2 or 3, 4 or 5 even, shallots that you can then harvest. So I tried experimenting by doing them with the zabroon. And just like onions, once the tops start to grow, and you can see these are, they are ready to harvest. So I sowed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is a bunch of 5 zabroon shallots. Don't they look amazing?
They really are lovely, aren't they? They're not as big as when we grow them individually, but equally they're a really nice size for cooking. I like those, that size, that's good.
So to give you a comparison, this is a single shallot that I grew from seed.
Oh yeah, you can really see the difference in size on those like that.
Yeah, but look how many more you get when they're multi-sown.
Yes.
They're almost, you've probably got the equivalent of 3 bulbs going on there.
Yes, two to 3, yeah.
So that was successful, Mrs. W.
Yes.
And from now on, we shall multi-sow our zabroon shallots. I've had to just overlay my audio on some footage we took a bit earlier while filming because, well, quite frankly, our camera has gone wrong. So I don't know quite what that is. All I can say is if you don't see anything next Thursday, you'll know why. We're trying to get a hold of a new camera. These are obviously not the cheapest of things. But it was a great onion harvest today, and one of the best. So I'm really, really pleased with that. And if you want to know exactly how to grow your onions from seed to table, then watch this video next.